It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Welcome back to this episode of Reality Check. We are your hosts, Jess and Jill. And I feel like I say this a lot, but today is probably a controversial topic, and it's a hot topic right now in our industry. And we want to talk all about weight loss injections, the good, the bad, the ugly, what we think about it, what we used to think about it, and just kind of on the back end, using them, applying them, and really how it ties into everything in the health and wellness industry and what to expect long term, because I don't think they're going anywhere. And I think it's important to have the right education around this and just know about accessing these weight loss injections and, what to expect. There's insurance things up and down all over when it comes to weight loss injections. So I do think that this is going to continue to evolve quite a bit as time goes on. So yeah, we have a lot to cover, but ultimately we want to talk about also who might be a good candidate for weight loss injections. And it's not up to us ultimately to decide, right? Like when we have these conversations, even with our clients or when women reach out to me, they ask what my opinion is. And I'm like, I can give you, pros and cons or talk to you about your metabolism. But at the end of the day, nobody can make that decision but you, right? And you and your doctor. And ultimately that's who should decide. But we do work with clients who have used them in the past or actively use them alongside our programming. And all of the things that we talk about still apply and are still present and are still utilized in terms of reverse dieting after a deficit and, prioritizing protein and strength training and all of those other things that we talk about when you're in a deficit, whether you're on an injection to support that deficit or not, right? All of the same things still apply, but there are some, extra things to consider. And there are, differences, right? In terms of obviously having a lower appetite and just some of the side effects that someone could potentially experience. So there's a lot to consider. But we have also different options, right? When it comes to these medications and just peptides in general. But I think Ozempic, Wegovy, semaglutide, right? Those are all the names that we're hearing. And Mounjaro/tirzepatide are now becoming, I think, a little bit more popular. And it's interesting, Jess, I don't know if you have seen this, but when I look at these conversations that come up on social media, when women are asking about weight loss injections and trying to get information, I actually saw an advertisement from a practice for weight loss injections. And it was like a, reduced rate semaglutide program. And in the comments, someone actually said, is this only for semaglutide or do you have the other better option? Which I thought was interesting when it comes to tirzepatide, because I think as people have gotten more education and more data has come out, obviously with people being on them, I'm assuming what they mean is I think tirzepatide has been promoted to come with less side effects than the other options. I don't know if you've seen that anywhere.
So that's funny. No, I have not.
Okay.
And I'll kind of go over this, but my opinion on this topic has developed and evolved. There's a lot of things I know I'm very vocal with my opinions. So I'm sorry if I come across harsh sometimes when I'm trying to share, but I'm sharing in the effort to, hey, if you're going to do it safely. Come on, do it so that you have the least metabolic long-term side effects so that you can keep it off. Like, I know that I'm very vocal about that. But my opinion has kind of developed. And part of that was originally when I was learning about it, it was mostly through Dr. Peter Attia. And he's a medical doctor who is a big researcher and expert in the field of longevity. And when he was talking about it, he's been giving his patients it for 10 years, and not just since it's become popularized, but he was giving it to type 2 diabetic patients specifically for insulin resistance, right? He noticed in his own patient population that the clients he had given tirzepatide to were losing less lean muscle mass. So that was my opinion was, okay, it's a little bit better in terms of the data on body composition. But one of the reasons that he assumed semaglutide had become more popularized is because the FDA only looked at the outcome of weight. They never looked at body composition and muscle mass to fat mass ratio. So the semaglutide group was losing more weight, but they were losing significantly more muscle mass, which is actually problematic for longevity and for health. So originally, when I'm like, oh my gosh, why is everybody hopping on this bandwagon? It's unhealthy. I'm thinking, again, my primary role is a personal trainer. I'm thinking, oh no, we're losing muscle mass. Like this is unhealthy for your strength and for your insulin resistance, right? So we really need to weigh the pros and cons. But it does seem like there's some slight benefits to trizepatide, but I think they're very similar in being an assist in a caloric deficit, period. So I'm not like pro con one or the other.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's just interesting to see the, like almost general public perception of them. And I feel like that has even evolved too. It was very heavily promoted instantly and everyone was like, give me this thing, right? And I still think it's that way. But I think people are, now that more research and people are a little bit more educated about it, are being a little bit smarter with those decisions. I think, and we'll talk about this, but I think the other side of it too is not only, the ease of access to, to get these medications for people, but also I don't want to say overprescribing, but the doses can be heavy, right from the jump for people. And I think a little bit too aggressive. And then obviously we'll talk about this, but the lifestyle changes and components and behavior changes and habit development and all of that we hope and want, right, to go alongside anybody that's utilizing these GLP-1 drugs. But ultimately, that's typically the missing link. And I've seen more things come out on social media of women saying, don't take these because of all the, you gain all the weight back. I gained all of it back and then some. And it's like, okay, context here is important, right? And obviously
like that,
we'll talk about that too.
And that's the piece we can speak to. So like, we are not medical doctors. I cannot speak. I can tell you like, here's the list of side effects that we've had people that we know people who have experienced them. But we most definitely can speak to the metabolic effects of it. And just like any other extreme diet, if you cut your calories super low and you do not adapt your body to be able to process more calories through muscle mass, and if you're not maintaining muscle mass, and if you're not learning the habits that go along with it, it's just like coming off of any other extreme diet where you're likely to actually gain back more. They've done studies like this. One popular one is the Biggest Loser study, but it's like people who tend to lose a ton of weight at once tend to gain back more than before. And half of it's behavioral and the other half is actually metabolic adaptation. So they end up with a slower metabolism than when they started, simply from an act of being in an extreme caloric deficit and losing it all at once versus dragging it out so your body slowly adapts.
And the other thing that I've seen, I've had women come to me and say, something is wrong. I'm desperate for help because I tried all these things, right? All these typical diets and things that people have tried. But that now I have women coming to me saying, I also was on Wegovy or semaglutide or whatever for X number of months and I didn't see any progress. And I'm like, well, let's talk about that, right? Because all that we talk about here is metabolism and muscle and all of those things, right? If you're already metabolically adapted at this really low calorie intake from a chronic low calorie restriction, right? Dieting history, going on these medications that is designed to curb your appetite, among other things, but ultimately to put you in a calorie deficit. Well, if you're already adapted to 1,000 calories or whatever it is you've been attempting to diet on, you're right. These injections aren't going to serve you in the capacity that you think, and you're not going to see these amazing results that other women do. Now, the women that are seeing really great results are people who tend to eat much higher calories or overeat, right? Or tend to eat in a calorie surplus or fluctuate, right? But ultimately, they are adapted at a higher calorie intake metabolically, and they are creating a very large deficit, which is obviously why the weight also comes off quickly when the weight loss injections come into play. So all that being said, obviously, we're going to talk about all of those nuances and the nitty gritty parts of it. But these weight loss injections, if you don't know, are GLP-1 drugs. So I want to talk about what that is and what that looks like, right? So GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor. And these are called agonists, right? So they're essentially mimicking these naturally produced hormones, right, within our body. And again, we're going to dive into more of the metabolic side and lifestyle side, not so much the side effects that you might experience and who should take it and who shouldn't from a medical history standpoint, because obviously we can't speak to that. But ultimately, there are ways to naturally stimulate this GLP-1, right? But for the purpose of this podcast episode, we're obviously going to talk about how taking these affects your body short-term and long-term. But typically these medications, and I think this is in the media now too, have been around and used for diabetic patients, right? And there's been talk too about like access of these medications and things, but more recently they've been approved and, like I said, very easily accessible for weight loss and appetite suppressant effects, right? So GLP-1 is a natural thing produced in our bodies, and it's not just hunger, right, that comes out for, but also, and Jess talks about this a lot, and I think whenever we talk about this topic, we bring this up, but there are foods too that you can actually eat to increase your GLP-1 production. And that's going to come down to all of the things that we typically recommend anyway, when it comes to more protein, more fiber, and then more specific foods that can help on a nuanced level. But in the grand scheme of things, big picture, we're still talking about all the same stuff in terms of protein, fiber, and adding those things in so that you're fueling your body, you feel fuller, right? And you're reaping those benefits without anything added in terms of managing the hunger cues and sticking to something long term.
And to jump in, just to educate everybody, and I don't know a ton about different peptides. I've never taken any weight loss or GLP-1 agonist peptides, but I've taken BPC 157, which is a tissue recovery peptide. So a peptide, what it is, guys, is it's an injection that causes your body to stimulate something it already produces, versus if you think of like bodybuilders who are on steroids, or if we even take a melatonin supplement or something, that's us actually taking the thing that our body already produces. The difference is that a peptide stimulates the production naturally. Okay, so that's the difference. There are all sorts of peptides out there with all sorts of purposes, not just GLP-1 agonist weight loss peptides. Okay, so if you hear somebody say they're on them, I know women who have been put on them for hormone replacement therapy and menopause, very different from these specific drugs we're talking about here today.
Right. Yeah. So this is just specifically about these weight loss injections, right? And their presence in this space. So, we both have had progression on our opinions of this and just over time, how we've seen them implemented and introduced by providers and practitioners, but also, like I said, I don't think they're going anywhere. So if we have this very large population of adults utilizing these for weight loss, our job still stays the same in that we have to help people lose the weight safely, effectively, and still maintain their health, and also maintain the results that they do get in the long term with lifestyle change, healthy habits that will help them forever in years to come, right? To be healthy, be strong, be fit, and live their best life ultimately, right? So, of course, initially as trainers and women in this space who are trying to make an impact and help people make a healthy change, initially I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, what? This is going to wipe everything out. Like, people are just going to use these. And then I saw the rebound, right, that people were experiencing. I'm like, this is the same thing, right? It's the same approach as somebody who went on Optavia, somebody who's on Weight Watchers or keto or just 1,200 calories because MyFitnessPal told them to, right? All of the same thing still applies. And honestly, if anything, this makes our job that much more important because we need to educate still on all of these things and ensure that people are using these responsibly, and not from the doctor, prescribing and dosage standpoint, but just managing things and their results in the long term and still prioritizing their health and their metabolism.
And micronutrients and muscle. So micronutrients and muscle mass and habit change so that you don't have that rebound effect. And again, we're speaking from a place of one of the things that made me more biased against it was one of my first experiences with it directly was a client whose doctor had put her on it. And this was very first when I started coaching with you. She was one of my first clients. She was put on it by her doctor and she experienced horrible, horrible side effects, nausea, like terrible stomach discomfort. She didn't see results from it. She didn't lose weight. But again, the more and more I know about it, the more it's because, well, she was somebody who was on a keto diet for 2 years before, super restricting herself, already at very low calories. So she was very calorically restricted. If you see it in different scenarios like that, like hopefully we can kind of educate you guys on how to do it in a healthy way. And also, if you are doing it, like, are you actually a good candidate for it or not? So again, like I saw somebody have bad experiences and didn't see results because she was a bad candidate for it. Her doctor shouldn't have recommended this as a solution. They recommended it as a solution because she was overweight, not because they took any time to look at what she was consuming on a daily basis or her movement patterns or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where the gap is right now with the way that these are being implemented. And we'll talk about what we're doing to try to fill that gap, and not just from a, doing what we do in coaching standpoint. But I agree that there has to be more criteria, and, they're tightening it up from an insurance coverage standpoint, but that still doesn't fill the gap of actually being a good candidate. And will this be effective? And what do we need to do to get these results and maintain them forever?
And pairing a service like ours with a service, if your doctor is putting you on a drug like this, we are not qualified. That is outside of our scope of practice to go and prescribe you something like this, or even to recommend it, right?
Yeah. So I think that, we even went out to dinner with friends recently, and my friend's husband is actually on Wegovy. And it's been interesting to see his journey through this, because it's been several months. He's lost weight. He says he's feeling good, all of the things, right? But he doesn't eat very frequently. His wife said he'll go all day without eating, right? So, and obviously I never insert myself into anyone's situation unless they directly ask for my help or guidance or opinion. So, I always just cheer him on from the sidelines, and he likes to give me updates on how things are going. But ultimately, he has even said that he will feel like physically ill, like to the point of like, I feel like I'm going to explode. And what he described, which I think is really interesting, because you can read all of this research and data, but to hear like real life perspective from our clients and from people like this is so helpful for me to understand better to how to help clients, right, that are on these. But he mentioned that sometimes, like, we all feel this, like when we're super hungry, we haven't eaten all day, right? Like life happened and you go to eat and like your eyes are bigger than your stomach, right? And you're like, oh, I'm so hungry. I need all this. I need this. I need this. And you're really full. And that's kind of how he described it, but on a very intense level, to the point that he might get to a point where he is really hungry and he eats something and it's really good. So he keeps going. And then once it connects, he's like, oh my gosh, I can't even move. I'm so full. So I think the other not side effect, but thing that people experience if they don't see the results is that, right? They're almost like, I hate to describe it this way, but like eating through the medication, right? Like they're eating beyond what that capacity should have been. And I think that's another thing that I had no idea needed to be considered or a factor, which is why when we have clients on them, we still do manage their calorie intake and monitor that in terms of, food quality and managing their metabolism, but also having data like that to work from, to know if something's not working or we're not seeing the rate of progress that we expect, just like we would, right? Like we need to audit and see what's working and what's not, and have that data to support our decision in updating a protocol. But I thought that was an interesting perspective to hear, because that was just a week or two ago. And I was like, wow, it's actually really helpful to understand as a possibility, right? Of somebody who's on the medication too.
It really is. And we're looking for different things than a doctor might be looking for. So we are looking at metrics like fullness and how's our sleep quality and how is our GI function and are we constipated? We're looking at those things with our clients, whether they're on this or not, right? A doctor is looking at weight loss as the primary metric. So pairing together two professionals who are qualified within their scope of practice is kind of what I wanted to get at. Like we can't go out and prescribe a medication or recommend a medication because we're not medical doctors and we're not pharmacists, right? A pharmacist is trained in that. I'm not. In that same way, if you are working with a practitioner and they are just writing you generic nutrition plans or workouts, like get a qualified professional who has credentials and experience in that piece to maintain the lifestyle piece and the behavioral piece and the nutrition piece. Like, get a nutritionist, work with somebody like us alongside your doctor or your nurse practitioner who's prescribing it to you if they don't have somebody on staff doing it. And to feed off of that, another thing that I think is really important is to look at body composition. So if your doctor is not doing this, I hope that there are some doctors that are doing it. I know many are not. If they're just measuring success by your weight, go seek out somewhere that has in-body scans. Like, we're in Delaware, and I know there's 3 gyms locally, and there's a physical therapy place that has one. You can go and just pay to use it once. Now, a body comp scale like that is not the most accurate, but it's consistent among itself. If every month or every 3 months you go in and you use one of those, check and see. You want to be losing as much body fat as possible and maintaining as much muscle and bone mass as possible. If you are disproportionately losing the same amount of muscle that you are body fat, that is concerning in the way that you are approaching it. So again, with whatever practitioner you're working with, they should be looking at those metrics too. And you can also look at inches to know that, but inches, strength, there's other data points that you can look at. But if weight is the only metric, that's a concern, because it could be done well or it could be done horribly wrong.
And what's interesting is everything that Jess is saying right now also applies to any other diet that you do. I think it's so important too, and I talk about this honestly on social media and just in my trainings and things a lot that I do, is fat loss is not the same as weight loss, right? And we're talking to a client who was previously on Ozempic, and she's like, I know I lost a lot of weight and I know I lost a lot of muscle, right? And we're kind of talking about what does that look like now, and what are the expectations going forward as we come off of this medication and get you back to a healthy calorie adaptation and build that muscle back, right? Because we get really caught up in the scale, and just like any diet, and it's more extreme with weight loss injections because you're going to probably see weight loss at a much faster rate. You're so conditioned to seeing that scale go down that we have to detach, like Jess said, and look at other markers and look at other data to see, are we doing this in a healthy and sustainable way? And again, at any rate, it's going to be a more aggressive approach, right? But it's important to remember that it's temporary, and we still have to do all the same things on the back end. So I agree that monitoring muscle is like crucial. Like, that's the point we really want to hit home today too.
And these things, again, like you just said, are no different than any other extreme diet. Like, that woman just started with us. She had come off of losing a lot of weight on Ozempic and is like, okay, help me build muscle. And she panics because she's like, oh no, I gained a pound. But we're like, wait, you haven't gained an inch anywhere. Like, you look the exact same. That's good weight. That means you gained muscle. She's the same as 2 other clients I have right now who had lost a ton of weight before hiring us. There's a huge mental component. So it's not just, here's your nutritional plan. It's, we're working through the mental health piece of learning to not be scared of food again as we slowly adapt our calories higher, as we get stronger, as we shift our focus from the scale to other things like how we're feeling. So there's a big mental component too. So whether you're working with a coach, a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a med spa, wherever you're getting it from, you need to be working with somebody who's also qualified and helping you get off of that journey. Or if you're not, go find somebody like that or like us after your journey so that you can get back to that healthy place, because you don't want to then be scared of food for the rest of your life. And again, it's like this same as the women who come to us after being on Optivia or any keto or low carb diet and they've lost a lot of weight. They're scared of food like that. Then you don't have to live like that forever, and you can sustain your results. It just has to be done very systematically.
And, I'm in so many calorie deficit and health and wellness and weight loss and whatever Facebook groups. And honestly, I get so much insight. I feel like I mention this at least like once per episode in some fashion, but, it's interesting to hear from the medication user's side and perspective, right? So a lot of what I see when women say they decide to go that route is I was in a calorie deficit and doing all of the things right and not losing weight. And I want to make 2 disclaimers in response to that. One, if you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. It's a 0% chance. It's literally not biologically or scientifically possible for you to be in a calorie deficit and lose weight. Like, that's just the way that it works. If you are in a deficit, you would see weight loss. And
if you're using some online calculator that's saying you should be in a deficit, That's because our bodies adapt. Okay. So if you have questions on this, go back to our previous episode about, is my metabolism broken? We can adapt our metabolism to lower and lower calories. And that's what happens when we plateau. Okay. So you can also adapt yourself in the opposite direction. But like Jill said, if you're not seeing weight loss, you're not in a caloric deficit. And maybe that's at a very low calorie amount for you because you've been dieting for so long. It's not good or bad. It just is the information your body is giving you.
Yeah. And that's not, you could have hormones, you could have inflammation, you could have a gut issue, you can be hypothyroid, all those things. I'm not discounting any of that. When you have those things present too, and this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's important to understand that, having PCOS in and of itself doesn't just tell your body, don't lose weight, right? Like it's an impact on your metabolism. It's impacting your sleep, right? All of those things are down regulating your metabolism, thus creating a calorie deficit more difficult, right? So that's one of those caveats. The other is that, when women say that I tried this and it didn't work and I needed to get on the medication, nobody, again, can decide that for you. But ultimately, that doesn't negate the things that you still need to do alongside of it, right? So it's just interesting to hear it from that perspective. And, I'm sure you've experienced this with clients because I know I have a ton recently, but they're like, in a deficit. And from our eyes, I'm like, wow, like you're doing so great. You're being so consistent. You're getting your lifts, you're eating your protein, you're seeing such great progress. And they're like, well, Susie in my office lost 30 pounds last week on Ozempic. And I'm like, hold on a second. Why are we comparing? These are two very different things, right? So that's the other thing to think about too. And, there's a lot of moving parts with these, which is why we're excited to talk through this topic and do a whole episode on it. But anyway, all of that being said too. Yeah, go ahead.
Good and bad weight are a thing. So like, again, somebody could lose 30 pounds and 15 of those pounds being muscle. They are in a less healthy place than when they started, proportionately in terms of their body composition. If somebody loses 15 pounds of body fat, but they maintain their muscle mass, or they only lose 1 pound of muscle, wow, that person is healthier, not only on the inside, and they're like, everything is healthier in their health markers, but also they look more toned and lean because they've maintained that muscle mass underneath. So from a health standpoint, it makes a huge difference.
And their odds of maintaining are also much higher too than somebody who's just like straight down.
Can I talk a little bit about clients that we have, and I would say past clients, honestly. I have 2 clients that are no longer coaching with us who have reached out to me. Hey, Jess, what do you think about this? And I have recommended, I think you might be a good candidate for it. Okay. So I think it's important too, to not just say, oh, it's not good. It's not a good option for somebody who's been historically dieting and has never learned how to eat at a healthy maintenance amount, has not learned how to get strong. I would never recommend it for somebody like that. The people I have said, you know what, it might be a good option for you. And then just when you come off of it, make sure you build properly, right? They are the people who are in a really good habit already of strength training 2 to 4 times a week. They are eating plenty of protein and whole nutrient dense foods. So they're eating meat, fruits, vegetables. The reason I say this is because I have other clients who are overeaters. I have a client who was asking her doctor about it, and she tends to overeat, but she's having a tough time with more caloric wiggle room getting any protein in. And I wouldn't recommend that for someone like her. I think she needs to establish the habits of knowing which foods she likes that have protein in them and learning how to eat more nutrient dense foods first. Because then when we pull away those hunger cues and now she has no calories to play with, what's the odds that they're going to be filled with any protein that's going to support her health? So I think the base of being able to know what nutrition goes into your body at a normal caloric amount is very important as an established criteria for anybody going into a diet. And this is one means of a diet.
Yeah. And something you said reminded me of something else I wanted to mention is a lot of women talk about how when they go on it, this like food noise component of like, they don't feel this constant need to eat, which I think is great, right? Like I can't speak to that from like a therapy eating disorder like that. I'm not qualified for that. And that sounds amazing for the women that struggle with that. But at the end of the day, if we still navigate this and approach this in the same way, where we prioritize protein and fiber and whole foods, again, I can't speak to the therapy side of it, but that is going to mitigate a lot of those cravings. Like I have women, I can't stop eating sugar. And I'm, when I ask them what their diet is, they're like, oh, I'm keto and I eat 1,100 calories. And I'm like, well, yeah, I would crave sugar too. Right. Like, so some discernment is required there. And obviously, if I ever have a client that comes to me that I suspect anything out of my scope that's coming up in conversation, or they ask me anything that I can't answer, of course, we refer them out. We have, partnered with therapists in the past for patients to, clients, they're either, I guess, interchangeably, but we've worked with clients who work alongside with a therapist for maybe a history of an eating disorder or maybe body image issues or things like that. So I think those are all factors to consider. So I'm not negating that part of it, but again, I still want to prioritize for you protein and whole foods and fiber. And again, monitoring calorie intake so that you know where you stand metabolically and what you need to do going forward to continue to see results and progress and success and feel amazing and all of those things too. So
I also want to talk a little bit about some of the side effects, from good and bad side effects, because I've seen a lot of people touting the effects on fertility and on insulin sensitivity and all these things that are also side effects of improving your nutrition and losing body fat without the peptides, without the injectables. So like I jokingly brag about how many of my clients just magically get pregnant and they thought they couldn't get pregnant. It's not because I'm doing something special. It's because we are adding nutrients and adding strength and pulling back some stressors. And that ends up happening. So some of the good and bad side effects are similar to good and bad side effects of any diet. I've seen a lot of women. There's like a moms group that I'm part of in our state. And I've seen a lot of women complain about hair loss on there who are on these drugs. Those women, my guess, and again, I'm not a pharmacist. I don't know what the side effects are from a compound standpoint, but my guess is it's malnutrition. Like anybody who is super malnourished and they're not giving themselves those micronutrients could suffer hair loss, could suffer actually not getting their menstrual cycle, just like anybody else who is in an extreme diet. And that's, again, why we want to make sure we're doing it in a safe way.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. And again, there are so many side effects and things to consider from a talk to your doctor standpoint, like things that we can't speak on. But personally, and it's honestly been really helpful to work with clients who are actively on it, as well as clients who are, coming off of it and things. But, I can see, again, people talk about the side effects of digestion and the slowdown that can come with it. And you hear that, right? And you think, okay, that's a side effect to consider, but like witnessing it in real time with a client, experiencing that alongside them is really helpful for us as coaches and providers to support women or men, whoever that are on these, but understanding the impact and how to, again, just maximize results and maximize how good they can feel when they're getting results and maintain them. So there's just little things to think about too when digestion is slowing down. Obviously, it's probably going to, you're eating a lot less food than maybe you were previously. So some of that is expected, but it's just important to recognize anything that could be a red flag or something that's worth diving a little bit deeper into in terms of like, you're only going to the bathroom a couple times a week or something, right? So those are just other things to think about too. And again, any other side effects, it's really important to talk with the person who is prescribing you these medications so that you understand what to look for yourself. Because as a coach, we can only do so much and we can only go off of what you tell us, right? If we're working with you on that. But it's important to understand and notice those changes in yourself too.
Yeah. And okay, part of this, because I always have this like good versus bad opinion of things where it's like, I need to learn some blurred lines sometimes because there is gray and everything, right? So I think it's important for our business. Me and Jill were having this conversation because I'm like, hey, if we're recommending people to any clinic like this, I have this fear because I don't want anybody to think our clients are getting results because of this. So I want to put this out there. All of the clients that I have ever posted before or afters, like graphs of their progress, I've never actually posted any of my clients who are on these injectables for this reason particularly. And it's not because I think it could be a great supplement for certain people, but because I don't want the mass population to think, oh, that's the solution, right? So I'm actually only sharing pictures. There's actually one client that I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's on it, but she hasn't told me yet, but she's losing at a rate that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm not posting her before and afters because I don't want the people who are watching and looking to disregard the value of strength training, adding protein, adding nutrients. Those three things, no matter if you're on an injectables, if you're not, whatever diet you choose, do those three things. Add strength, add protein, add nutrients, because it's going to make you healthier at the end of the day. So if we ever do post clients like this, I'm going to be the first one to say, hey, here's the criteria. This person, it was assisted by blank drug. And I'm going to be putting a little disclaimer on it so that you guys can see the difference, so that there's not this like, oh man, is everybody getting the results that way? Like, I think that that's very important for us to be transparent around that, because so many people out there right now are losing a ton of weight, and it's like, time out. Some might be doing it in a really healthy way. Some might not. And I've seen women that are not clients of ours that I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're on it, but they're doing it in a really healthy way. And I see them strength training really regularly, and they look healthy. They don't look sunken in and skinny fat, right? So anyway, I just want to put that out there. I personally plan to do a disclaimer anytime we post client results like that moving forward. And again, I haven't yet to this point for that reason, just ethically.
Yeah. And also, like, something that I desperately want to like work on and share is not to, again, negate somebody who just goes and does weight loss injections and sees results, because you're going to, right? Like, obviously that's pretty straightforward, but I really want to show the difference between somebody who prioritizes protein and strength training and does a reverse diet at the end, and say like, okay, this is somebody who was on it and lost this much and didn't do these things. And this is somebody who did, and this is what to expect. And then also, not to say, oh, this transformation picture looks better than the other, but it's really more from the perspective, okay, 1 year from now, where do these people stand, right? What do these look like? And that's really what I wish, and I'm sure we will be able to at some point now that this has become more popular, but that's really what message I want to put out there. I'm not saying you're not going to lose weight in a drastic calorie deficit. Obviously you are. So all of that being said,
let's keep it off. Let's keep it gone. So like I hope that is okay to share. Like earlier at the very beginning of this year, there's a local friend that I reached out to. Like she owns a med spa, and she started prescribing this, partnered with a nurse practitioner. And I'm like, please partner with us. Like, I want to be able to help people who are doing this to build muscle and sustain it and learn how to reverse diet after and learn how to keep it off long term. And so anyway, she ended up, I think she is doing some sort of writing workouts. I'm not sure if she's working with anybody or what, but we ended up actually seeking out to be able to partner with somebody in this way. So I was hoping that Jill could kind of do an introduction on how we're going to do that. And hopefully we can kind of make an impact and not be so black and white, and help the people who choose to be on this do it right and keep it off.
Yeah. So it's funny. I stumbled on this person totally on accident on social media. He's local to me. So I currently, as of the day that we're recording this, live in Michigan, and he's local to me. But fortunately, his weight loss program is national, so he can work with anybody anywhere in the country. And they offer weight loss protocols, right? Prescribing these medications, and they do it through a compound pharmacy, which means they can manage these doses, right? And start smaller and things like that, and manipulate things a little bit more easily. Whereas, if it just comes in a, standard dosage, then obviously that's what people have to take if that's how it's prescribed, typically like, through insurance and things like that. And they also offer hormone replacement therapy. And that was a thing that was kind of a gap that I saw in our service. And not that our service can't help the masses on its own, but I want to be the place that somebody can get all of their answers. Even if I can't be your therapist, I can connect you with one, right? If you need that support. And the really cool part about this partnership, he can help people nationwide. He has access to all of these peptides and medications, and he has access to hormone replacement therapy. And, we have a lot of menopausal clients, and not every menopausal client needs to go on hormone replacement therapy, but there are ones that do. They just need it based on their symptoms. And, I wanted that to be accessible to our clients as well. So the really cool part is I reached out to him, and I wanted to make sure that the person that I did partner with really respected me in my scope of practice and what we do for our clients, and understood that we can complement each other really, really well and help clients and patients get better results and sustain them forever. And that's really what this has turned into. And it's really great. I mean, we've had referrals in both directions where he's like, hey, I've got this gal and she's been on this for a long time. She's at a plateau. I told her, you can help her break through this, right? She's worried about her metabolism. And in the opposite direction, I've said, hey, I have this patient or a client X, Y, and Z. She's worried about this, this, and this. Can you get her set up on whatever you think is appropriate, right? So it's really, really great to be able to do that. And actually, the most recent client that we just referred is saving like thousands of dollars going through this practitioner paying out of pocket than she even was with quote insurance coverage.
And she was somebody who is a type 2 diabetic who absolutely qualified through insurance. It's just the rates were wild. And she called me like, I'm so discouraged. Like I've been doing all this work and now I was going to do this to assist in my deficit. Right. And she's going to be saving like $500 a month going through our clinician and that compound pharmacy rather than through her doctor and insurance.
Which, if you guys haven't seen by the time this episode comes out, insurance is making some serious changes on who is going to be eligible for this coverage, right, of these weight loss drugs. And a lot of people are probably going to have to go to these more like aesthetic places. And because of that, I want to hit the message home that it is so important to make sure that you are seeing somebody that is qualified and understands all of the things that we are sharing in this episode. Because if somebody is just going to willy-nilly prescribe this to you so that you lose weight and this, that, and the other, and you feel amazing, but there's no exit plan, there's no talk about when you come off this or how long you're going to be on it or what to expect or any of those things, or starting at smaller doses and, minimum effective dose of anything, I think is important. And it's really important to make sure that the person and the provider that you're talking to and working with can do that for you. So I want to be clear that this provider is incredible with that. He understands the importance of protein and muscle building and, muscle maintenance while you're on the medication and reverse dieting after the fact. It was so great. Like I wish we recorded our whole conversation initially.
Yeah, he's a medical doctor, and the nurse practitioner who works with him specializes in like functional health and nutrition. So it just felt like a really good fit. But it's been really fun watching his social media. And I don't know him personally, like Jill and him have had all these conversations. But it's been fun watching his social media and his messaging transform as he's seen results from people too, because we kind of went into it like, hey, let us prove to you that our people are going to sustain longer than your people are going to sustain how you've been doing it. And he was like, all right, I'm up for the test. And now when women, he's showed us DMs where now when women are reaching out and saying like, hey, I really want to get skinny, or I really want to lose a lot of weight. He's like, do you mean get strong and fit and stay healthy forever? And we're like, yes, Dr. Alex, that's what we're talking about. Like I can hear us speaking through him a little bit now in terms of health and longevity and sustainability, as opposed to just weight loss.
Yeah. And it's also really cool. I mean, my background is in the medical field and I've had to assist, physicians in surgery, and I've had to guide physicians through certain surgeries. And there's absolutely a certain dynamic when working with doctors, and some are very receptive to outside feedback and some are not. And that was also important to me. And he's very receptive. He has no problem calling and asking me questions about nutrition things. And he's referred his family members to me. And I think it's going to be a long-term solution for a lot of people. And I think, again, it's important to know that you have to have a provider that recognizes all of that. And fortunately, like Jess said, his nurse practitioner can do, she helps with all of the functional testing and the things that we do too. And she's able to very easily prescribe things, as needed, right? Based on lab work and things too. So all of that being said, it's accessible, it's here, it's not going anywhere. So make sure that you're doing it safely and effectively and still prioritizing all of the things that we tell you guys to prioritize. And obviously, if you need recommendations or referrals for that, he takes very good care of our clients, obviously as his patients, but also from the financial side of things too. So I hope that was helpful. I think we kind of covered everything that we wanted to cover. Again, I know this is a very controversial topic, and we're not here to sway or encourage or discourage. It's really just, here are the facts, here's what we've seen, and ultimately you are the decider, right? In terms
And it's
of
kind of like anything we say about weight loss. Like if you're losing weight this way, if you're losing weight that way, our priority and our values as coaches is to help people with sustained health and fitness. And it's sustained is the key word there. So regardless of how you do it, regardless of which diet you choose, like doing extreme stuff in the wrong way can lead to more harm than good. So we want to make sure it's done in a holistically healthy way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it for this episode, guys. But we would, as always, love to hear your feedback and questions on this topic or any other topic that you might want us to cover. So feel free to message us anytime on Instagram. In the description of the episode, you can find both of our Instagram links. So we would love to hear your questions or your experiences with this topic so that we can obviously continue to share more as we go and as we learn as coaches, but as we learn as an industry too. So that is all for today's episode, and we will talk to you guys next time.